Propaganda during the Salem witch trials. The 1600s are known as a time of religious superstition and instability. As King William's War raged on, the town of Salem found itself embroiled in a storm of paranoia and death. Now, 300 years later, this event is known as the Salem witch trials, and is a perfect example of how effective propaganda can affect a community. The events of the Salem witch trials were escalated to such huge proportions, partly and due to the time period that it happened in. The 17th century was a time of heavy religious superstition. With many people living in fear of the devil, they were paranoid of anything that could point to his influence. In addition, the town of Salem also had to deal with the pox pandemic and a threat of attack from nearby tribes that pushed the people of the village to the brink. With all these issues weighing down on the townspeople, they jumped to the first signs of possible witchcraft, which would come when the town reverend's daughter and niece fell ill in 1692. Worried, the Reverend Samuel Paris called the village doctor who diagnosed the children with witchcraft. Unbeknownst to the Reverend, this diagnosis would spark a year full of death and suspicion. Many of these people who were accused due to their different lifestyles or habits. For example, Bridget Bishop was accused by the town for marrying multiple times, owning 2 taverns, and dressing in bright colors. Even people who respected in the community were also accused, such as Rebecca Nurse. Although she was liked in the community, the young girls who accused her put on performance of seizures and sickness to get her accused and eventually executed. During this time period, 200 people were accused, with 30 being found guilty. Of the 30 accused, 19 were eventually hanged and another 5 died in custody. These deaths were caused by political and religious strife. During the 17th century, there were 2 locations known as Salem. One was a thriving commerce town, while the other was a poor town that had a feud between its 2 prominent families, the Porters and the Putnams. The Porters had strong connections with the wealthy trading families from Salem town, while the Putnams wanted autonomy for their village and helped represent the less wealthy people. This had caused conflict in the town even before the witch trials had begun. The trials would go on to influence politics, particularly in how the courts worked. It established the right to legal representation, the right to cross-examine one's accuser, and to assume someone is innocent before guilty. It also serves as a metaphor for the persecution of minority groups by a more powerful elite. It would also be made into a play by Arthur Miller called The Crucible. The Salem witch trials were a time when propaganda ran rampant. There were multiple ways that the state tried to cover up what was happening, such as when the government abandoned any publications about the trials. He explained this ban as, I have also put a stop to the printing of any discourse one way or another that may increase the needless disputes of people upon this occasion, because I saw a likelihood of kindling an inextinguishable flame if I should omit any public and open contest. This is the state attempting to ban any dissent about the trials and also to cover up their mistakes during the trials. Even when Boston minister Cotton Mather wrote a book about the events of the trials, it was one that had to be authorized by the government. In the case of the Salem witch trials, the propagandists can be identified as the upper class and the church of the town of Salem. These are the people who push the agenda of witches, infiltrating the community, and only spread the fear even more. They laid the suggestion of the devil living among them in the form of witches. Although the public opinion of the trials started off with most approval, as the number of accused reached into the hundreds, it started to waver. It was when it reached 150 accused that the public opinion turned against the trials. Even with the public playing such a large role in the trials, the public opinion had changed. During the trials, there were not many examples of counter-propaganda, as anyone who tried speaking up against the trials would attract suspicion and possibly be accused of being a witch. Once you spoke up against it, were accused of being a witch or dealing with the devil, such as was the case with John Proctor. The Salem witch trials focused on defamation as a way of spreading its propaganda. No more people were accused and harassed based on suspicions from other people in the town. The defamation reached everyone, even upsetting citizens such as Rebecca Nurse. The propaganda that was present during the Salem witch trials was successful. The hundreds were imprisoned and dozens executed. It is clear that the fear-mongering from the church and the elite had won over the people of the town. This is due to many factors such as adhering to the public community of the town as suggestion. The events of the trials were driven by black propaganda. where lies and deceptions were being spread instead of the truth. The Salem witch trials were a time where death and mass hysteria ran unchecked. Spurred on by the teachings of the church and the influence of the elite, the once fallen, unassuming town of Salem descended into a hive of death and hysteria. As more and more people realized what was going on, it was already too late. The trials will live on in infamy and is an ideal look at how propaganda drove a normal town to violence. Thank you for listening.